So here he is on 2 PR bonds already. He picks up this assault family violence case, and they give him another PR bond. He goes back about 18 hours later, back to the apartment. She's 4 months pregnant. He stabs her over 20 times, and then calls 911 and confesses to his crime. We get there, and he's covered in blood. And so this is one of those, in my opinion, that the blood's on the politicians' hands that are pushing this agenda and just allowing this revolving door of PR bonds. And this is just but one example, where this has happened.
Welcome to another episode of the Fine Blue Line podcast. 2 cops, from cops, for cops, where we discuss issues, trends, products, and so much more. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Fine Blue Line podcast. Today, we have a special treat for you. We have the City of Pasadena, Texas Police Chief Bruegger, with us, and he's going to talk to us today about bail reform. So this is something that is sweeping the nation, especially as the courts turn more liberal, and you're having a more difficult time in some of the appellate courts, the ones that Trump hasn't had a chance to switch over yet. And we're going to hear from him about how bail reform is affecting not only him and his area, but we'll talk about and bring up some national trends as far as that goes. Chief is also going to talk about some incidents that happened in his area that led him down this path of bail reform, because we've talked briefly before this, and he wasn't always a bail reform expert. So, Chief, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done in your career, where you started, and introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. So I started with the Pasadena Police Department when I was 21 years old. I had just graduated college and was looking for a job and stumbled upon here. And I've risen through the ranks. I've been here 22 years, served really all across the department, all the bureaus, from operations to investigations to admin and support. I'm really a patrol guy at heart. And I like to think I haven't forgot where I came from. And in January 2nd of 2019, I was sworn in as police chief here and been serving in that role for the last year and a half or so.
So, quick question for you, off topic.
Yep.
You come up through the ranks and then you become chief of that department. In ways, I think that would be easier, and in some ways, I think it'd be tougher. What do you have to say about it?
It's got advantages and disadvantages, and I think it depends on the agency and the needs of the agency at the time. We're a department of about 300 sworn. So the challenge, I guess you will, is everybody knows everybody. And so if you do a lot of stupid things when you're a younger officer, like we tend to do occasionally, people don't forget those things and, occasionally remind me of the things I might have done as a young officer. But with it, our organization has a very strong culture. And so it helped me navigate that and really hit the ground running, because I know the players. Being a new chief, you've got different people jockeying for different positions, and knowing people's backgrounds and knowing the players, that aspect helped me quite a bit.
Do you get the old salty vet coming in your office and he's a patrol officer, maybe never promoted, and he says, "Damn it, Chief, come on, I remember when we were partners 20 years ago."
Yeah, it happens on a regular basis.
Okay, I figured it would.
Yes.
So, and 300, Chief, that's a pretty good sized department. I think you look across the nation, that's in the upper probably 30%.
Yes, and a lot of people, not say forget about us, but don't realize it because we're overshadowed by Houston. But we're actually in the same county as Houston. We share a common border with Houston. Our entire west and north side border Houston. So we end up with a lot of the same big city crime problems that other big cities have.
Right. I think that and I can't remember, but the average police department in the United States is somewhere around like 15 or less, I think.
Yes, that's right.
So
we're in the top, I think, 25% as far as sizes. So yes.
Yeah, good deal. So you were a police chief for less than 2 weeks, and you had a little coming to Jesus with the patrol officer, so to speak, or they did with you, I guess. Tell me about how that went down and what that was all about.
So I've been the chief for 11 days, and one morning I end up with a whole bunch of cops that are waiting to talk to the chief and are pissed. And I was like, good grief, haven't even been here 2 weeks as a chief, and you guys are already mad at me. Well, it turns out we had a crook that on January 2nd, he robbed a CVS and a Walgreens on the same night, two different ones. He had a Halloween mask on, so at the time we didn't know who he was. We started, we're a very proactive police department. I like to think we're tough on crime. And so it was on the 13th, January 13th, we had two more robberies. And when the first one happened at a Walgreens with a Halloween mask, the unit started sitting around all the other Walgreens and CVS in the city thinking he would not be so smart and do a second one. And sure enough, he did. And one of our patrolmen was sitting outside when the suspect came running out with a gun in one hand and a bag of money in the other. And he started following him in the police car. And the suspect turned with the gun in his hand, and the officer ran him over with the police car, deadly force. And they had called me that night, and supervisors, I guess, were concerned because it was unique. It's not every day that, police use their car as a deadly weapon and run somebody over. So I think they were concerned that I was going to be upset, and I was actually proud they did the right thing.
Are we talking about a Crown Vic or Ford Explorer?
This was a Crown Vic. It was a younger officer, so it was one of our older cars. So he ran him over. So
he did you a favor. You got a new car out of the deal, maybe. Huh?
Yeah, right. So he gets arrested, and he was charged that night with 4 counts of aggravated robbery and 1 count of aggravated assault on a police officer for pointing the gun at the officer. And he gets booked into the county jail, and later the next morning is released on 5 PR bonds for all of these offenses. And one thing I should point out is this guy had in one of his robberies actually shot at some witnesses who were following him. So, we're, very close to a capital murder case, had he hit somebody. So this is a violent suspect. And so, we had, I'll just say the Democratic sweep took over Harris County and turned Harris County blue January 1st. And so you had some new judges on the bench that decided they were going to, flex their muscle and push their agenda. And this judge, again, released him on the 5 PR bonds. And the next day, the policemen were pissed, and they wanted me to do something about it. And so here I am, a new chief, wondering what do I need to do? But my biggest thing was, the guys and gals that are out there putting their lives on the line every day, I've got to back them as a chief. That's important to keep them, in spite of what the courts do, we got to go out there and continue to do our job. Even when it's difficult, even when it feels like the world's against us, we owe it to the good citizens. And so I took to social media at the time. And really what I was trying to do is let my guys know that I would speak out and I would back them. And the response really was overwhelming at the time. And I didn't know that much about all this bail reform. I'd heard it in the background, but bail wasn't something necessarily that I dealt with. And so here I am naive, didn't think it would really impact me, and it did. And so that was really my introduction. And I had people calling from all over the country, thanking me for speaking out. And I think, really what pissed me off, if you want to be honest about, at the time, was that more police chiefs won't speak out when the time's right. Now, I'm not saying I got to speak out on every issue, but there are some things that are so important. You need to put, the politics aside, and you need to speak out, because this is a public safety issue. And, I had judges tell me I need to stay in my lane. Well, my lane is public safety. And when you turn around and let these people back out, that is my business. And so I became very passionate on the cause of bail and bail reform. And so that was really my introduction.
A couple of things on that, Chief. Number one, I think you're probably in the top 10% that, feels like you need to support your guys. I think a lot of chiefs have lost that aspect. But that's neither here nor there. That's not something we're going to change, especially on this podcast today. But staying in your lane, like you said, your job is public safety. Serve and protect. It's on the door or in somewhere in every police department in the country. And if they're not going to do their job and they're elected, it's hard to get rid of them. It's your job to bring out their inadequacies or what they're doing wrong, because my chances are the public doesn't want a guy like this out. So they're not speaking for the will of the people. They're speaking for the will of themselves or whoever bought their election. And I think it takes somebody like you standing up and saying, no, you're wrong. This is not what the citizens want. The citizens don't want people out there robbing drugstores and shooting at people. I can guarantee it. There might be a fraction that does, but it's very small. And somebody has to stand up for the good citizens and also your patrol officers at the same time, like you said. And I commend you for that. I don't have too many police chiefs on here, especially departments your size, because, you're admin at your point in your career. And let's face it, I'm a road cop.
Right. No, yeah. And, and I think that was one of my messages early on was it didn't matter where I was at in the community. And once this hit the news, and it was on the news cycle here for quite a while. And when I would be out in the community, it didn't matter if I was in a minority community, a white community, a affluent community, a poor community. Everybody was upset about this. And that was like you said, everybody wants to be safe. And it seemed like the overwhelming, I don't know anybody who felt sorry for this guy. And it was, just a quick story. When we put it on our departmental Facebook page, we had several people who were like, that's bullshit. I got locked up for this and I didn't get a PR bond. So, we had people that had been arrested before really come into our defense, which is unique, as you can imagine.
Right.
And so it was pretty common that somebody's pushing a political agenda.
Have you had, so this is one particular incident that you're telling us about. Have you had any incidents where somebody's been out on, so you call it a PR bond. Here we call it the catchphrase pre-trial release. And when pre-trial release was sold to the citizens, basically, it was sold as this. Okay, you get caught with a user amount of dope in your pocket, and you're probably going to get, 4 days in jail? If that, right. You might get a year probation. The problem was they're holding people for 4 months till trial. So they wanted to pre-trial release those people. I have no problem with that. And as a citizen and everything else, I don't have a problem with that. Because you can't afford bond, you're going to sit in jail for 4 months on something you're probably only going to get a day or two for anyway, What I have a problem with is when you're looking at 30 years and they're letting you out, or you're looking at 10 years and they're letting you out. No, you could set that towards crime or time served, because at some point along the way, a prosecutor looked at this and said, yeah, the officers did a thorough enough investigation. We've got enough to hold them. They took it before a judge that found the same thing. You can hold their ass, because there's no reason that person should be out walking around. And here, pretrial release has morphed from what it was sold as to a guy breaking into an officer's home, saying he broke in because there's a cop car in the driveway. Officer's off duty, gets in a fight with the guy in his living room. The officer wins, beats crap out of him. They take him to jail, and the guy's out the next day. I don't think that's what this was put in place for. Come on, So that's where I have an issue. And we've had a couple instances here where people have been pretrial released for domestic assault or something to that effect, and gone back and killed their partner. So have you ever had any instances like that down there?
We have. And I can tell you story after story that we've had. And it was sold, really the same way here, that this was for nonviolent offenses, people with a suspended driver's license, again, languishing in jail for months until, usable amounts of marijuana, things like that. That's what this was sold at. It was really not sold as any violent offenses, but it's almost like, you gave them an inch and they've taken a mile. And to answer your question, have we had a case? Yeah, unfortunately we have. And we had somebody that was killed. Very tragic case that I think could have been prevented had they not pushed this agenda that they've pushed.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate what it's turned out to.
Yes.
What else would you like to say on bail reform, Chief? You've got the audience here. You're probably going to have 1,100 people listen to this, or 1,300.
So, I think the biggest thing is education, because here I'm a police chief and I really didn't have any idea, what was happening until it was too late. And so if here I am in the criminal justice system and I don't know what's happening, I don't think the general public does either. And after the one case I was telling you about, where I became so outraged, so many people, what do we need to do about this judge? And I'm like, you people just freaking elected him back in November. But people don't even know how these judges get there, and they're voting. And in Texas, up until recently, we had straight party ticket voting. And so you could walk in the booth, hit Democrat, and you vote for every Democrat that's on the ticket without having to go punch each one of them.
Is a judge in your area, are they nonpartisan?
No, our judges, you have to run partisan. You're either Republican, Democrat, Independent. And so,
oh, really?
Yeah, we have in Harris County, one of the largest counties in the country, We have well, I take that back. We have one because the governor appointed them because there's a vacancy. But every other district court, I believe there's 12, 13 district courts here in Harris County that hear all the felony cases. Every single one of them is Democrat.
Wow.
Yeah. And let me talk about the one tragic case, if you will, just for a minute, because, I mean, this is the problem that I have is the guy on this, his name's Alex Guajardo. He gets arrested in May of 2019 for his second driving while intoxicated offense and leaving the scene of an accident. And he gets 2 PR bonds, which it doesn't sit well with me, especially on, second, intoxicated driving. But neither here nor there, he gets those 2 PR bonds. At the end of July, he assaults his wife and kills the family cat. We go out there and he gets arrested for family violence assault. So here he is on 2 PR bonds already. He picks up this assault family violence case, and they give him another PR bond. He goes back about 18 hours later, back to the apartment. She's 4 months pregnant. He stabs her over 20 times, and then calls 911 and confesses to his crime. We get there and he's covered in blood. And so this is one of those, in my opinion, that the blood's on the politicians' hands that are pushing this agenda and just allowing this revolving door of PR bonds. And this is just but one example, where this has happened.
So I've had some domestic violence training in addition to the academy, and killing their spouse's animals is a huge sign, and this 2 DUIs, yeah, PR bond, I could go either way on that, honestly.
Right. Me too.
When he goes back and assaults her, you revoke the prior to and you put his ass in jail.
Yes.
That's where the problem lies with me. There should have been no way he was out 18 hours after the first arrest. He doesn't even have time to cool down, for Christ's sake.
No.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. No bond conditions. And so, he goes back over there. Like I said, the issue I have is once you've already got a PR bond, to me, that's your freebie if you want. You don't get another freebie. You got your freebie. Yep. So when you get picked up on something else, I mean, that's got to end regardless of what you're out on.
I don't know how it works down there, but do you guys issue a pre-trial no contact order at least?
Depends on the judge. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
For us, it's mandatory. If it's a domestic assault charge and you're awaiting trial, there is a no contact order put in place every time.
I wish it was that way here.
Not that that's going to stop a guy,
right.
a piece of paper from killing a gal.
Yeah.
But at least there's some type of condition on the release, for Christ's sake. You're at least trying to deter him.
Right.
But wow, that's amazing to me that there's just no. See, like here, the other thing when they put this whole deal into place was you had to check in, I think, once or twice a week. I think once in person, once by phone or something. Now it's like once every 2 weeks by phone. So, I mean, they're not even monitoring these guys, basically. And we're dealing with them at, suspended driving, or, I mean, it's just some minor stuff, but you can see that they're out because it's in our computer system that they're assigned a PO and they're on pretrial release. And we're like, Jesus, they're out again already?
So I'll do you one better than that. Here, as part of the bail reform on misdemeanor side of things, and again, I don't have an issue with it on a lot of the misdemeanor cases. Here's where I have the issue. So you've gotten your freebie and you got your PR bond. But what they've made is if you can't show up for court, any reason or no reason at all you have to do is call and tell them you won't be there. And if you decide you're not going to show up for whatever reason, as long as you show up sometime during the next week, they won't issue a warrant for your arrest. So they've made a mockery of the criminal justice system, to be honest with you. And again, whether you're charged with a misdemeanor or felony, I mean, that's pretty serious and it should be treated as such. But it's become, if it's convenient for you to come on. If it's not, well, that's fine. Just come when it is and let us know when you're going to come.
Now, I'm going to put a direct correlation to that. How is the murder rate in Houston, in that county?
Oh, it's up. Houston, their violent crime is through the roof right now. They are on track. I know their murders, one of the highest that they've had in years. And I just can't help but think it has to do with, all of these reforms. And then, we have a Democratic district attorney and you're not seeing the sentences that you used to see. And so I think all of that together, crooks aren't dumb, I guess, in some ways. And, when they say crime doesn't pay, I think it does now in many regards. They get caught, they know they're going to get a couple days and they're out and right back at it.
Wow. I just don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know where you go from here. How do you change it? I mean, these judges are elected. There's not a lot you can do, especially once they're in office. When people are, like you said, pissed and they're like, what do we do about this judge? You just tell them, oh, wait 4 years. I mean, there's the options are limited. You can recall them, but what's the chances of that happening? Slim to none.
Right. And right, wrong, or indifferent, people don't educate themselves on the judicial races, policemen included sometimes. And I mean, these elections have significant consequences, which is what I think we're seeing right now. And, not to get too political, but I'm afraid that it's going to have to get bad before it gets better. And I think we're seeing that right now across the country, where you look at some of these big cities, what's going on or has gone in, in Seattle, Portland, just the lack of law and order, I guess, if you will. And people are going to have to get pissed and they're going to have to show up and vote.
Yeah, I think my personal opinion is these riots and things have all but guaranteed a win for Trump. I mean, I've told my son this, we were talking about it the other day. So you got 20 people that are going to vote Republican no matter what. You got 20 going to vote Democrat no matter what. What you worry about is the 60 in the middle, 60%. And I said, and those people are mostly good law-abiding people, and they're tired of this shit. They don't want to watch this on their news when they turn it on. Cities being burned down,
right?
People jumping on cop cars, lighting a cop car that they paid for on fire, or assaulting cops, trying to blind them with lasers, all that shit. People are like tired of it. They've had enough. And I think that you're going to see that in the polls or in the voting booth here come November. I mean, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a landslide. Now, I'll say this. I think Trump has his flaws. I mean, somebody needs to take his damn Twitter away. But for the most part, he's pro-cop, which we didn't have for 8 years prior to him. He's for law and order. He doesn't put up with crap from anybody, and he'll call them out in public. He, prior to him getting elected or getting sworn into office, he's going to start World War III. He has done more for national peace than anyone else in the last 50 years. No one has gone to North Korea and even talked to him. He signs a peace deal the other day between Israel and some of the Muslim countries. I mean, Twitter sucks. But other than that, I think he's doing a great job. The economy was great until, COVID hit and some of these, our liberal-ass governor still has us shut down up here.
No, and I agree with you, and I'm hoping the silent majority comes out, because it's scary to think what the alternative could be. And I don't know how, some of these cops are, hanging in there. You look at Portland, who's had 100+ nights of they're not protests or riots. And that they, the city leaders are just allowing that to continue. That I just can't fathom that, and you look back at Seattle and, we allow people to take over an area and, anarchy, and we allow that to happen. It's like, what country are we living in?
I couldn't fucking believe that. And I'm 2.5 hours away from Seattle, and I'm like, you got to be shitting me, man. I'm like, you've got an occupying force in your country, and you're going to just let it happen?
Yes.
Well, and they did until they had 3 shootings, 2 people killed, and then they thought, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Apparently, they can't police themselves. We do need real cops, and this defund the police shit not going to work. We better send the real cops in and clean this up, and they did. But they let it go for too long, and unfortunately, 2 people died. Well, one kid was like under 18, I think 17. His dad just filed like a $3 billion lawsuit against the city for allowing the CHOP or Chaz or whatever the hell they called it, and his son getting killed.
It's crazy. Like I said, words can't even describe. I mean, it would make me angry to the point I had to stop watching the news sometimes, because I was like, really? We're just going to stand by and let this happen? I mean, and here's the sad part about all of this is all of these reforms that the left is pushing to help their constituents. At the end of the day, all these policies are doing is hurting people of color, minority communities, the poor communities. Those are the ones that are going to, suffer. It's like somebody was talking the other day about, defunding the police. If the affluent, parts of a city, they defund the police, they have the money oftentimes to, hire a private security force, something like that. The inner city, they don't have that. And so they're just going to be victimized even more. And that's the frustrating part is, people need to wake up and realize that, oftentimes, they're just hurting their people more.
Yeah, the business owners in those, low-income communities are going to be extorted and everything else. They were in Chop and Chaz. They were having to pay protection money to the security force or whatever the hell it was they put in place. But if you look at and I try to watch CNN. Usually I can't watch for more than about 10 minutes. My blood pressure goes through the roof. But if you watch some of the conservative news people that are not necessarily on a national channel or something like that, and they have like a YouTube channel or whatever, they've gone and interviewed people in some of these inner city areas and said, what do you think of defund the police? And every one of them that I saw, and they could be editing, I don't know, but there was plenty of people that said this, was that's our only line of defense between the drug dealer and me. I want the cops here, but it's these, white little spoiled ass brats from the suburbs that are the ones causing all the damn problems for the most part.
Right. I think even Al Sharpton, I think the most intelligent thing I think I've ever heard him say was last week when he was talking about what a bad idea it is to defund the police. And I was like, wow, he even gets it. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah. I work for a city that's about just over 20,000 people. And we've got about 30 commissioned officers. And I'll tell people, how many cops you think we got working right now? Oh, probably like 6. There's 3 of us, and then the county is huge. We have a huge county, and it's kind of separated into two sectors kind of thing. And there's an area so it's the upper valley and lower valley. It's 2 valleys. So in the lower valley, from one end of the county to the other, which is up against the reservation, is probably an hour and a half code run.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell somebody, how many deputies you think are working right now? Oh, I'll say just in the lower valley, probably 20. I'll say they work at times with 2. I'm like,
wow.
You can't defund us any fucking more, people. That's all you got, 2 people. And luckily there's, 7 or 8 small communities with, a couple guys on or whatever, and they go back them all the time, but the deputy sheriffs are on their own all the time.
Right. Yeah,
so.
It's tough. We've been cutting for years. I think when the economy downturn, whenever that was, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and we've never fully recovered. So again, to continue to defund, public safety is going to suffer.
For sure. Well, anything else you want to say on bail reform, Chief?
No, I just think people, including cops, we all need to wake up. We all need to, educate ourselves on this and do our part to, try to educate the public, because again, until it impacts people, they really have no idea what's going on.
I agree. And a lot of people, cops are kind of sight unseen. You see your car driving around and oh shit, drop your phone or make sure you're going the speed limit. But it's not until you need them that you realize their worth.
Yes.
And I think that, a lot of, I'll take my dad, for example, just a working guy, and he never, hardly any interactions with the police in his whole life, but you got some people that live, with an abusive partner or something, and they're dealing with them once a week, and the kids are seeing the cops and everything else. But like I said, it's just they're sight unseen to a lot of people, and they don't realize what we do. We don't. One thing I've said on this podcast before is that cops do not do a good job of selling themselves. We've got a lot of cops out there that coach Little League or involved in the community in a lot of different ways, and we're typically private people, and we don't want that stuff out there. Cops are recluses on their day off. They stay at home. They don't, I deal with all the shitheads on my days on. I don't want to deal with them on my day off type thing. But I think we could do a lot better job of, hey, we're part of you. We're part of the community. We're just like you. We coach the Little League. We coach the kids basketball team. We go serve food at the mission, whatever it is. I think we could do a lot better job of that.
I absolutely agree. And I'll tell you one of the things, and you touched about it, talk about the election, and I think it's like that with the police. I think there's, 20%, we're throwing out a number here that love us, we can do no wrong. 20% of us will never win over, and we have those people in the middle. And what I worry right now is those people in the middle. And so I'm telling my folks all the time is it's kind of a push and pull for those people in the middle. And if all they're doing is watching TV, I'm afraid that, I say the other side, they're going to pull them, away from law enforcement, skeptical of us, not trust us. And it's our job to pull the other way, if you will, to keep them on our side. And, that's the one thing about police is they're private. When they do good deeds, you see it all the time, giving boots away. Well, those are the ones you see. There's a million others that happen behind the scenes. And policemen don't do it for the accolades. They don't do it to, for the fame. They do it because it's the right thing to do. And unfortunately, I think sometimes we do have to toot our horn a little bit more. And I'll just tell you a real quick story where it happened to me. Here I am, a new chief, been on the job a month, and I'm coming back from lunch. And as I'm coming back from lunch, one of our young female officers is loading up her car with her unit with a bunch of stuff. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Oh, a family's apartment burned a couple weeks ago. I've been collecting all this stuff and I'm taking it out there to them. Had I not walked by right at that moment to catch her doing it, I never would have known about it. And in one way, that's awesome that, her heart's pure and that's she was doing it for the right reasons. But the other is we're missing a golden opportunity to show people the awesome stuff that happens every day in policing.
Hey, I like what you're doing here. Hold tight. PIO is going to go with you. Is that kind of what you said?
That's exactly what we did. Because I didn't want to miss an opportunity to show the good work that our people are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And, I've bought people food in the middle of the night, things like that. And I don't, go tell the chief, oh, hey, chief, you know what I did last night? I just do it,
Right.
Well, I got you on here. We've talked for 30 minutes or so. You've got the stage. Is there anything else you want to talk about? You could tell me a cop story. I don't really care. Whatever you want to talk about.
No, I just think right now it's trying times. And, one of the things I'm preaching to my folks is I think we have to remember that, even in somewhere like Portland or somewhere like Seattle, I still want to believe that the overwhelming majority of the public supports us. And when you turn on the news, get on social media, it's hard to remember that sometimes. And I think we need to continue to, put on our uniforms and go and serve. And don't forget those people that do support us and have our back and really need us. And in times like this, it is easy for cops to circle the wagons and, think it's an us against them. And, I'm going to sound like a chief here for a minute, but we really have to continue to serve those people because people do support us and don't turn our back on them right now. And that's my soapbox. That's my preach, as chief. But I think that's important. But it's not to say we don't need to keep our head on a swivel. You look at the ambushes that have happened over, in the last 24 hours. I think there were 2 or 3 across the country. And, you had the one in LA over the weekend. And we do have to keep our head on a swivel because unfortunately, there are people that, it is their mission to kill or hurt us. And it's a small percentage, but it's still there. And we've got to deal with it. But don't forget the good people. That's really my message.
I've said a few times that, there's 10 to 15, maybe 20% of the population doesn't like us, but boy, that's a fucking loud 10, 15, 20%,
Yeah. And that's the thing you got to keep in perspective is they're loud, but yes.
Lucky for me, unlucky for you, but you can say all the chief stuff you want and I'll just edit it out later.
Nobody told me that.
Hey, Chief, one other thing is I ask anybody that's in law enforcement typically that comes on, you've got 22 years on as a cop. So it sounds like you've been a chief for, about a year and a half now. But prior to that, I'm sure you worked patrol at some point in your career, which is a bread and butter law enforcement. You've worked investigations, it sounds like. So you've got a guy in front of you that's got 5 years on. You got a guy in front of you with 15 and a guy in front of you with 25. What do you say to them to help them survive their career? And it could be on duty or off duty.
So, the 5-year guy, most of them are hardworking. They're trying to do the right thing. I see more off-duty stuff, alcohol, usually opposite sex, social media are the 3 things that seem to get everybody in trouble, and truthfulness is the other one. But those 4, are what seem to get people in trouble. And it seems like the 5-year guy, a lot of their stuff is off-duty stuff. And it's the big thing I think is, especially with young people, is remind them that this job is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Don't burn yourself out. The 10-year person, to me, that's that if you hit 10 years, you're probably in it till retirement. I call it that point of no return. And look, I try to be a pretty upbeat person most of the time. And I always tell people this job's what you make it. You can come to here every day and be miserable and hate it, or come and make the most of it. And I always tell people, life is too short to be angry every day, to, be pissed off at the world. And so, you got to make the most of it. And that's, to me, that 10-year guy and the 25-year guy. Look, I always say there's kind of this scale. I don't expect as much out of a 25-year guy work-wise as I do the 5-year guy, but you still got to put something in. People are still paying you. We get paid pretty well here, and so you still got to do something. And one of the big things with those 25-year guys and gals is mentor those younger people. You've been there, the ropes, the ins and outs, and look out, for each other. And to me the thing that's changed, I think, in policing over the last 20 years is, at least I see around here, I don't know about all parts of the country, is that camaraderie, and that that brotherhood and not stabbing each other in the back, and this everybody out for themselves within the organization. And again, I think times like this, we do have to band together. Again, not an us versus them, but it's important to look out for each other. And, I think sometimes to a fault, we look out for each other, and, if your brother needs help, get him some help. I mean, I think I was reading something the other day, and they were talking about the average policeman experience. I want to say it was like 100 and something traumatic events in their career. And so if you think about all that crap just building up over 25 years, that's a lot. And you can't forget some of the things you've seen and heard over your career. And, that's one of the good things I think in the last 5 years in policing we've done is look out for our cops. I think we didn't do it very, very well before that, but, officer wellness, safety and wellness has been a big push, and that's a good thing. And again, I think it's one of the things we still do a better job. And, when you need help, ask for help, because we're all human.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That is one aspect of law enforcement, even since I started 15 years ago, that's really changed. So for the better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard the 3 Bs?
I don't guess so. No.
Okay. So we have a talk with all our rookies when they come in, usually. Like I'm a patrol sergeant. I'll call them in. I'll say, hey, listen, man, it's a tough job to get. It's a hard job to lose, but the 3 Bs will get you every time. Booze, broads, and bucks is what we tell them. So if you're not paying your bills, you're out fucking dating crazy women, learn when to cut the rope and just go, okay, I'm done with her. Right. And then you drinking, so bruise, broads, and bucks, the 3 Bs. And so every rookie, because I'm the FTO sergeant, so every FTO comes through me, or every student officer, and they all get to talk, and it's usually I shut the door. Hey, listen, man, you can really screw yourself up here. Here's some easy ways I've seen over my career. Guys doing stupid shit. And usually it's not always just one of those. It's, they got the, they're not paying their bills because they're buying a bunch of booze, or they're chasing women and boozing it up. It's always a combination of those 3, it seems like. So we tell them about the 3 Bs, and we always warn them right off the get-go. So
off-duty stuff gets, well, at least seems for me, off-duty stuff gets more people in trouble than on duty most of the time. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Chief, I appreciate you coming on today. Anything else you want to add? Now's your time.
Nope. I appreciate you having me.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fine Blue Line Podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can contact the podcast through our Facebook page, Fine Blue Line Podcast, our web address, finebluelinepodcast.com, our email, rob@finebluelinepodcast.com, or you can call us at 208-918-3025. And as always, stay safe.